There is something happening in your kitchen right now that most doctors never talk about. Not because it is a secret, but because the connection is subtle, silent, and by the time it becomes obvious, it is often too late. I want to change that today. My name is Dr. Marcus Elliott, and I have spent over 2 decades studying the relationship between everyday dietary habits and the development of chronic disease, particularly cancers of the digestive system. What I am about to share with you is not a scare tactic, it is science. And once you understand it, you will never look at your microwave the same way again. Before we dive in, I want to ask you something. When was the last time you reheated leftovers without a second thought? Yesterday? This morning? Most of us do it constantly. It is part of modern life. We cook large portions, store the rest, and heat it up the next day. Practical, economical, sensible. Except that under certain conditions, that routine habit quietly creates a hostile environment inside your body, one that places disproportionate stress on one of the most underestimated organs you have, your pancreas. The pancreas is a paradox. It is essential and it is invisible. Tucked behind your stomach, it works around the clock, producing digestive enzymes and regulating blood sugar through insulin. It does all of this without a single complaint, without symptoms you can easily notice until the damage has already accumulated over years. That invisibility is precisely why pancreatic cancer carries one of the lowest 5-year survival rates of any cancer in existence. By the time most people receive a diagnosis, the disease is already at an advanced stage. Prevention is not just important here, it is everything. And prevention begins with understanding what is actually happening on your plate. What most people do not realize is that cooking food is a chemical process, not merely a physical one. When you apply heat, cool something down, and then apply heat again, you are not simply warming up dinner. You are triggering a series of chemical transformations inside that food. Some of those transformations are harmless, others generate compounds that promote oxidative stress, systemic inflammation, and DNA damage. Those 3 mechanisms, oxidative stress, inflammation, and cellular damage, are the foundational trilogy of chronic disease development. They are the terrain on which cancer grows. And today we are going to look at 5 specific foods that, when reheated incorrectly, become active contributors to that terrain inside your body. Stay with me through all 5, because each one comes with practical, actionable guidance that you can implement today. This is about empowerment, not restriction. Number 1, oils and fried foods. Let us start with something that is not technically a food, but is inseparable from how we cook and reheat: oil. Fried foods are everywhere. Leftover fries, yesterday's breaded cutlet, that crispy chicken from dinner. What do most people do the next morning? They either microwave it or throw it back in a hot pan. That decision is the beginning of a chemical problem. When vegetable oils such as sunflower, corn, or soybean oil are heated to frying temperatures, they begin to oxidize. That oxidation produces aldehydes, lipid peroxides, and free radicals, compounds with well-documented connections to cellular damage and chronic inflammation. Now here's the part that matters specifically for leftovers. When you reheat oil that has already been cooked, especially to a high temperature a second time, that oxidation accelerates dramatically. The compounds formed during the second heating are more concentrated and more reactive than those from the first. What happens when those compounds enter your body? Your immune system recognizes them as a threat and mounts a defense response. That defense response is inflammation. If you regularly consume reheated fried foods, you are essentially keeping that inflammatory alarm ringing on a low but constant frequency. Chronic low-grade inflammation is not like an acute fever. You do not feel it directly, but over months and years, it creates systemic stress that affects every organ, including the pancreas, which is exceptionally sensitive to inflammatory environments because of the enzymatic work it performs daily. Additionally, these oxidative compounds enter the bloodstream and can directly assault pancreatic cells, interfering with their function at a molecular level. Think of it as introducing corrosive material into a precision machine. The damage is gradual, cumulative, and mostly invisible until it is not. What should you do? First, never reuse frying oil. This is non-negotiable. Once oil has been used for frying, discard it. The chemical damage is already done, and reheating it will only compound the harm. Second, shift your reheating method for fried leftovers. Instead of using a microwave or returning food to hot oil, use a conventional oven at a moderate temperature or an air fryer. These methods restore texture through dry heat without saturating the food in additional oxidized fat. Third, whenever possible, choose to eat fried leftovers cold or at room temperature rather than reheating them at all. Number 2, leafy greens, especially spinach. This one surprises people. Spinach is one of the most celebrated health foods on the planet. How could it possibly make this list? The answer lies not in the spinach itself, but in what happens when you cook it, let it sit, and then apply heat a second time. Spinach, along with other leafy greens like Swiss chard and beet greens, contains naturally occurring compounds called nitrates. In their original form, nitrates are not a concern. The problem develops in 2 stages. First, when cooked leafy greens are left to cool slowly at room temperature or stored for extended periods, naturally occurring bacteria begin converting those nitrates into nitrites. Second, when you reheat those nitrite-rich greens, particularly at high temperatures, a reaction can occur that generates a class of compounds known as nitrosamines. Nitrosamines are classified by major international health authorities as probable human carcinogens. The strongest evidence links them to cancers of the stomach and esophagus, but their genotoxic nature, meaning their ability to directly damage DNA, means that the risk does not stop there. Every time your body processes these compounds, it must engage its detoxification systems, and the pancreas is intricately involved in digestive chemistry and metabolic regulation. Repeatedly flooding that system with genotoxic burden creates chronic biochemical stress, even if you never feel a specific symptom. The fix here is simple. Cook only what you plan to eat in a single sitting when it comes to spinach and other nitrate-rich greens. If you have leftovers, cool them rapidly in a shallow container and refrigerate them within an hour of cooking. The best approach is to eat cooked spinach cold, added to a salad, blended into a smoothie, or combined with other cold ingredients. If you must reheat it, do so only once, quickly, and to a moderate temperature. But the honest recommendation is to avoid reheating these vegetables entirely. Number 3, rice. Rice is so fundamental to so many cuisines around the world that the idea of it being dangerous seems almost absurd. And yet, improperly stored and reheated rice is one of the most common causes of foodborne illness globally, and the mechanism behind it carries real implications for your pancreatic health. The issue is a bacterium called Bacillus cereus. Its spores are extraordinarily heat resistant and are commonly found in raw rice. Standard cooking temperatures kill active bacteria, but do not always destroy the spores. After the rice is cooked, if it is left at room temperature for an extended period, those surviving spores can germinate, multiply, and produce heat-stable toxins. The word heat-stable is critical here. When you reheat that rice, you may kill any living bacteria, but the toxins they have already produced remain fully intact and fully active. Those toxins cause acute gastrointestinal illness, nausea, vomiting, cramping, the classic presentation of food poisoning. Many people dismiss this as a mild inconvenience, but from a physiological standpoint, every episode of foodborne illness is an acute inflammatory event that places significant stress on your entire digestive system, including the pancreas. Repeated low-level exposures, situations where the toxin load is high enough to cause subtle irritation, but not a full-blown episode of sickness, can contribute to chronic gut inflammation over time. And there is a well-established bidirectional relationship between gut inflammation and pancreatic stress. The gut and the pancreas communicate through shared vascular pathways and immune signals. A chronically inflamed gut creates a chronic inflammatory signal that the pancreas cannot ignore. Handle rice safely. As soon as it is cooked, serve what you need and spread the remainder in a shallow container to cool rapidly. Do not leave cooked rice sitting at room temperature for more than 1 hour. Refrigerate it promptly in an airtight container and consume it within 24 hours. When reheating, ensure the rice reaches a fully steaming internal temperature throughout, not just on the surface. Reheat it only once. If there are leftovers after reheating, discard them. Never reheat rice a second time under any circumstances. Number 4, chicken. Chicken is one of the most consumed proteins on the planet, and leftover chicken is a staple of meal prep culture. However, how you reheat it matters enormously, and the consequences of getting it wrong go beyond simple stomach discomfort. Raw poultry carries a well-known bacterial risk, primarily Salmonella and Campylobacter. Proper initial cooking destroys these pathogens. The danger with leftovers is recontamination, or more commonly, uneven reheating. The microwave is particularly problematic for this. It heats food in an inconsistent pattern, creating areas that reach safe temperatures alongside cold zones that remain hospitable to bacteria. If contamination occurred after the initial cooking through improper handling, contact with other surfaces, or inadequate storage, those cold zones in microwave chicken can harbor surviving bacteria. A Salmonella or Campylobacter infection is not merely an uncomfortable 2-day event. It triggers a full-scale immune response involving inflammatory cytokines that travel through the bloodstream and affect organs well beyond the digestive tract. The pancreas, already sensitive to inflammatory environments, is caught in the crossfire of that systemic battle. Beyond the acute episode, habitual low-level gastrointestinal stress from improperly reheated poultry contributes to the same pattern we have been discussing throughout this conversation: chronic inflammation, chronic oxidative stress, and cumulative cellular damage. The guidance here is practical. Store leftover chicken in an airtight container and refrigerate it within 2 hours of cooking. When reheating, use a food thermometer. Every part of the chicken must reach an internal temperature of at least 165 degrees Fahrenheit. For large pieces, the microwave is inadequate. Use the oven at a moderate temperature or a covered skillet over low heat, allowing the heat to distribute slowly and evenly. For many preparations, the safest and most delicious option is to eat leftover chicken cold, shredded into salads or wraps, where bacterial risk is eliminated entirely. Number 5, potatoes. The final food on this list carries a different kind of risk, and in some ways, it is the most insidious because it does not involve bacteria or toxins that you can avoid through careful food handling. It involves chemistry that happens during reheating itself, and it has a direct connection to pancreatic function. Here is what most people do not know about cooked potatoes. When you cook a potato and then allow it to cool, some of its starch undergoes a structural transformation into what is called resistant starch. This is genuinely beneficial. Resistant starch is not rapidly digested in the small intestine. Instead, it travels to the large intestine where it feeds beneficial gut bacteria, supports a healthy microbiome, and slows the absorption of glucose, which moderates blood sugar responses. Cooled potatoes, precisely because of their resistant starch content, are actually associated in research with improved glycemic control and reduced colorectal cancer risk. The problem is reheating. When you reheat cooked potatoes, particularly at high temperatures, a significant portion of that resistant starch converts back into digestible starch. The beneficial structural change is reversed. This means that reheated potatoes, especially those heated aggressively through frying or roasting, cause a faster and sharper rise in blood glucose than cooled potatoes. The organ responsible for responding to that blood sugar spike is the pancreas, which must surge insulin output to compensate. Isolated blood sugar spikes are not inherently dangerous. The concern is habitual repetition. A diet that consistently generates these spikes keeps the pancreas in a constant state of reactive demand. Over years, this pattern contributes to insulin resistance, a condition where the body becomes progressively less responsive to insulin, and the pancreas must work harder and harder to compensate. Insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes are themselves recognized independent risk factors for the development of pancreatic cancer. The pathway from repeatedly reheated high-starch meals to pancreatic stress is not direct or immediate, but it is real, and it is cumulative. The additional concern with potatoes is acrylamide. This compound forms naturally in starchy foods during high-temperature dry cooking, such as frying or oven roasting. Acrylamide is classified as a probable human carcinogen. When you take a potato that has already been cooked and refry it or roasted again at high heat, acrylamide formation can increase. The safer approach to leftover potatoes is to eat them cold whenever possible, as potato salad, for example, where the resistant starch is preserved and no additional acrylamide is generated. If you need to reheat potatoes, do so gently using steam or low microwave power rather than high-temperature dry heat. Never refry previously cooked potatoes. That is the highest risk preparation method and offers no benefit that cannot be achieved through a safer alternative. Let us bring everything together. 5 foods, 5 distinct mechanisms, but one unifying story. Reheated oils generate oxidized compounds that drive systemic inflammation and attack pancreatic cells directly. Reheated spinach can produce nitrosamines that carry genotoxic risk and burden your body's detoxification systems. Improperly stored and reheated rice can deliver heat-stable bacterial toxins that trigger acute and chronic gut inflammation. Poorly reheated chicken risks bacterial contamination that produces a full-body inflammatory response, and repeatedly reheated potatoes eliminate the glycemic protection of resistant starch while potentially increasing acrylamide levels, driving insulin demand and long-term pancreatic stress, oxidative stress, inflammation, cellular damage. These are not abstract concepts. They are the mechanisms through which decades of small daily choices compound into serious disease. The pancreas, silent as it is, registers every one of those choices. But here is what I want you to hold on to as we close. None of what I have described today requires you to adopt a perfect diet, give up your favorite foods, or spend hours in the kitchen. The adjustments we have talked about are small. Cook slightly smaller portions. Cool leftovers quickly and store them properly. Choose to eat certain foods cold rather than reheating them. When you do reheat, do it with the right method and verify the temperature. These are not major sacrifices. They are minor shifts in routine that add up to meaningful protection over time. And beyond the kitchen, remember the broader picture. Maintain a healthy weight. Avoid smoking. Limit alcohol. Reduce your intake of processed sugars. Build your diet around whole foods, plants, lean proteins, healthy fats. These habits do not just protect your pancreas, they protect everything. If this information was valuable to you, I want to ask something in return. Leave a comment below and tell me which of these 5 foods surprised you the most. Was it the spinach, the rice, the potatoes? Let me know. Your comment helps this information reach more people who need it. And if you want to continue learning how to protect your health through practical, evidence-based nutrition and lifestyle science, subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell. Every week, I bring you content that translates complex medical research into decisions you can actually use in your daily life. Your health is worth that commitment. I will see you in the next video.